For nearly 2 decades, Hollywood has spent, well, billions of dollars, really.
Oh, absolutely.
And they've convened just countless writers' rooms, launched these massive franchise reboots, all trying to engineer the perfect, strong female character.
Right. And it's a constant struggle.
It is, and yet so much of what we get on screen ends up feeling, completely hollow.
Yeah, you get the stoic warrior who never smiles.
Exactly. Or the emotionless assassin. Or, like, the sarcastic boss who just happens to be incredibly good at holding a sword.
But has the emotional depth of a puddle.
Right. A puddle. We keep trying to solve this narrative puzzle, but an animated television show aimed at kids actually beat everyone to the punch.
Back in 2005, no less.
Yeah, back in 2005. So today we're doing a deep dive into why Avatar: The Last Airbender completely revolutionized character writing.
There we did.
And we're going to look at what a compassionate healer, a blind earthbender, and a teenage warlord can actually teach you about your own boundaries and your own definition of...
Which is such a massive, relevant topic for anyone listening.
It totally is. But before we get to the show itself, I was looking through our notes for today's deep dive, and I found this striking, just singular note from one of our secondary sources.
Oh, the economy of lived expression?
Yes, that's the one. And it's just one sentence, really. Just a directive. It says, say experience instead of live.
Yeah, it is a fascinating, like, a linguistic speed bump, right?
It really is.
And it perfectly frames the psychological breakdown we are going to do today. Because we see that phrase, lived experience, literally everywhere in modern discourse.
Oh, everywhere. Corporate training, academic papers, social media.
Exactly. It has become a total staple. But when you stop and actually scrutinize the phrase mechanically, you have to ask why that modifier even exists.
Right, because what is an unlived experience?
Exactly. The word experience, by its very definition in the dictionary, requires someone to have lived through it. An unlived experience is an oxymoron.
It's just a theory at that point.
Right. It's a theory. So the addition of the word live is doing some really heavy unspoken lifting in our culture right now.
Okay, let's unpack. Because adding lived to experience is, it's like adding the word real to truth.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. It implies there is a fake version floating around out there. If I have to tell you I am telling the real truth, it means we operate in an environment where the baseline assumption is deception.
That's a really sharp analogy, yeah.
So if people feel compelled to say lived experience, maybe that modifier exists as a sort of defensive mechanism, to demand validation.
Absolutely. It's a way of saying, look, I didn't just read about this in a textbook.
I didn't hear about it secondhand. I was in the trenches. I lived it.
Right. The fact that our language has evolved to include that word tells us a lot about how often people feel their actual messy human experiences are just being dismissed.
Dismissed by the world around them, yeah.
And this demand for an experience to be tangible and respected, it translates directly into the media we consume.
Oh, 100%.
Because when we talk about narrative fiction, there absolutely is a fake version of experience floating.
Trope.
Yeah, the trope, the stereotype. The neat binary box that characters, especially female characters, are shoved into by writers.
Writers who are basically prioritizing a plot device over actual human psychology.
Exactly. Like a writer needs someone to be rescued, so what do? They create a damsel.
Or they need someone to be intimidating, so they create a stone-cold killer.
Right. But those aren't people. Those are just functions.
Which brings us to the core source material for today's deep dive. It's a brilliant, incredibly exhaustive YouTube video essay by a creator named Mazur.
It's a fantastic...
It really is. It's titled, What Avatar Teaches Us About Femininity. And I know some listeners might be wondering, how does a cartoon from almost 20 years ago tie into complex linguistic theory or modern identity?
Well, it ties in perfectly.
It does, because the central thesis of this essay is that the female characters in Avatar, The Last Airbender, resonate so deeply with us, even all these years later, precisely because their power is not derived from tropes.
Or those arbitrary, sudden power-ups so often.
Right. Their power comes directly from their actual, authentic experience.
And I want to be clear about our mission today. We are not just delivering a nostalgic recap of the show's plot.
No. Definitely not.
We are conducting a really deep exploration of narrative architecture and psychological profile. We're going to examine how this specific piece of media refused to replace emotional intelligence with raw power.
Which is so rare.
It is. The writers fundamentally understood that true strength isn't about ignoring your trauma or ignoring your societal limitations.
It's about how those specific experiences forge your methodology.
Exactly. So to understand how the show breaks the traditional mold, we first have to examine how it reimagines the most historically restrictive mold of all. The mother figure, yes.
In almost every fantasy or sci-fi ensemble, you have the caretaker, right? The emotional anchor. And in this narrative, that is Katara.
She is the anchor, without a doubt.
But I have to admit, when I first watched the show years ago, I fell into the trap of viewing Katara's role as kind of a passive one.
Which is a very common reaction, honestly.
Yeah, because in a lot of workplaces or friend group, being labeled the mom of the group is a backhanded compliment.
It usually implies you are the buzzkill.
Right, the buzzkill, the one who cleans up the logistical mess while everyone else gets to execute the exciting vision. It's coded as domestic and, safe.
And the source material identifies that exact societal bias. We constantly conflate nurturing with passivity. Katara operates as the emotional core of Team Avatar, but her motherly nature doesn't stem from some inherent naive soft.
No, it is forged by a profound traumatic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She lost her own mother to an act of war at a very young age. She didn't just passively inherit the role of caretaker.
She actively stepped into the vacuum left by violence.
Right. She is grounded and thoughtful, and she's constantly trying to maintain the psychological cohesion of the group. But the critical distinction the writers make here,
this is the key part,
is that her empathy does not negate her lethality.
Yeah.
She is an incredibly capable, highly dangerous warrior.
But let me push back on that slightly, or at least play devil's advocate regarding how we usually consume these stories.
Sure, go ahead.
Because we are conditioned to believe that nurturing and dangerous are mutually exclusive concepts.
Oh, absolutely we are.
Think about how many revenge movies feature a main character who has to literally lock away their feelings. They look at a picture of their family one last time.
Put it in a drawer.
Put it in a drawer and then go become a killing. The implication is always that empathy slows you down. Empathy makes you hesitate.
It's seen as a liability in combat.
Exact. So how does the show mathematically balance her being the group's therapist and their primary tactical asset?
It balances it by inextricably linking the two. Her combat mechanics are a direct extension of her emotional intelligence.
Oh, I love that.
The video essay points to a definitive culture-clashing moment that illustrates this perfectly. It's her fight with Master Paku in the Northern Water Tribe.
Such a good scene.
So Katara travels across the globe, literally surviving a war zone, specifically to learn advanced waterbending from the world's greatest masters.
Right.
She arrives, and Paku, who is an entrenched traditionalist, just flat out refuses to teach her combat.
Because she's a girl.
Exactly. He tells her to go to the healing huts with the other women. His society dictates a strict binary men fight, women heal. He genuinely believes he is preserving the natural order of their culture.
Which is just such a maddening, visceral wall to hit. She didn't fail a test of skill.
No.
She failed a demographic requirement. And this is where modern media usually stumbles.
I know, constantly.
A lesser show would just have Katara magically discover some secret ancient waterbending technique, overpower him in 3 seconds, and demand his respect.
They'd hand her a hollow girl boss victory.
Exactly. A hollow victory. But she doesn't get a magic power-up. She challenges a grandmaster to a duel, fully knowing she is outmatched because the systemic barrier itself is the obstacle she has to dismantle.
And the mechanics of that duel are vital to understanding her character. It is an ancient, immovable tradition, meaning a desperate, unstoppable force.
Yes.
Paku is a master. He has decades of refined technique. Katara basically has raw power fueled by absolute indignation.
Just pure rage at the injustice of it all.
Right. But as the fight progresses, we see her apply her specific personality to her fighting style. The video essayist notes that her fighting is precise, calculated, and highly adaptable.
She doesn't just try to hit him harder.
No, she tries to outsmart him. She turns his own ice attacks against him. She uses the environment.
Because waterbending, fundamentally, is the element.
Exactly. It is about the push and pull, redirecting energy rather than just absorbing. Katara completely embodies this philosophy.
She redirects the oppressive energy of her culture right back at its enforcer.
It's brilliant.
And even after she earns his respect and he finally agrees to teach her, her fundamental role as a caretaker never diminishes.
That's the most important part.
Right. She doesn't have to stop being the mom to be a warrior. The show allows both to exist simultaneously.
She physically saves the main character, Aang, multiple times.
Yeah, most notably using that spirit water to literally pull him back from the brink of death after he's struck by light.
But she also emotionally saves the group. There are scenes where the rest of the team completely falls apart without her logistical and emotional labor.
Her empathy is the structural glue of that entire group.
It is. Consider the biology of the analogy you almost touched on earlier regarding the mama bear.
Oh, yeah.
A bear's capacity to violently defend its territory is completely inseparable from its drive to nurture its cubs.
Right. The lethality is a symptom of the empathy.
Exactly. Katara's lethal capability is fueled by her deep emotional connection to the people around her, not her detachment from them.
Not from putting the picture in the drawer.
Exactly. And the narrative eventually tests the absolute extreme limit of this philosophy in the episode called The Southern Raiders.
Oh man, that episode, it is an absolute masterclass in psychological tension.
It really is.
This is where Katara and her former enemy Zuko go on this rogue mission to hunt down the specific Fire Nation soldier who murdered her mother.
This is the moment the compassionate warrior concept is stretched to its absolute breaking point.
It really is.
The video essay spends significant time analyzing this arc because it asks a terrifying question. What happens when the caretaker is consumed by vengeance?
She becomes entirely single-minded. It's scary.
It is. She utilizes incredibly dark, forbidden techniques, like blood bending.
Which is literally physically controlling the water inside another human being's veins.
Just to interrogate people. It is a raw, ugly portrayal of grief.
And traditional narrative structures, especially in Western media, dictate that closure requires blood.
We are conditioned to want her to kill the man who ruined her life. It feels like justice.
I remember watching that for the first time and being genuinely afraid of her. She corners this man, Yon-Ra, who turns out to be pathetic. He's just cowardly and empty.
He even offers his own mother's life in exchange for his.
Which completely disgusts Katara. She stops the rain in midair, turns it into a dome of ice daggers, and prepares to execute him.
And then she doesn't.
She lets the water fall. She walks away. And I've heard people argue that this is a cop-out, you know?
Oh, yeah. The kids' show couldn't show a murder, so they had her take the high road.
Right. But I think that reading completely misses the point of her character.
It fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of agency. Sparing him is not a failure to act.
No.
It is the ultimate exertion of control. Because if she kills him, she's operating on the exact same zero-sum, violence-based logic that the Fire Nation uses.
She would be allowing his action, the murder of her mother, to dictate her morality.
Exactly. By choosing not to strike, she reclaims her agency from her trauma.
She looks at the man who broke her family, realizes that his pathetic existence isn't worth the sacrifice of her own soul, and chooses to retain her humanity.
It perfectly illustrates the difference between an experience and a lived experience.
Yeah.
Her trauma isn't just a backstory that makes her look tough. It's a crucible that clarifies her boundaries.
She knows exactly what violence looks like. She knows exactly what it feels like to be on the receiving end of it.
And she actively decides not to perpetuate that cycle.
Yeah.
She proves that choosing compassion isn't something you do because you are weak or naive.
It's something you do because you have the strength to absorb the pain without passing.
And narratively, the essay argues this moment is the structural cornerstone for the entire climax of the series.
Because it paves the way for Aang.
Exactly. It paves the way for Aang's ultimate dilemma, how to defeat the tyrannical Fire Lord Ozai without compromising his own pacifist or nomad belief.
Both characters are forced to confront the incredibly difficult countercultural idea that mercy is not...
Right. By choosing compassion over revenge, Katara validates the core philosophy of the entire show.
When you look at how this applies outside of the fictional world to, our lives, it's profound.
It really is.
In our modern workplaces and our corporate ladders, we often reward ruthlessness.
We call it efficiency.
Exactly. We view empathy as a liability, something that clouds judgment.
But Katara's arc challenges that entirely. Her compassion is a calculated, active strength.
It's what allows her to adapt, to heal, and to keep her team moving forward when the logic of war says...
She demonstrates that the strengths to heal and the strength to fight are not opposite. They're two sides of the exact same.
But as we pivot to the next archetype, we encounter a character who approaches vulnerability from a completely inverted perspective.
A total 180.
Yeah. If Katara demonstrates that empathy is a form of power, our next subject demonstrates what happens when the environment forces someone to view vulnerability as a terminal.
We move from the adaptable fluidity of water to the stubborn, unyielding density of earth.
We move to Toph. And I have to say, Toph is arguably the most entertaining character higher.
Oh, hands down.
If Katara is the water that navigates around the boulder, Toph is the boulder that simply refuses to move out of the river.
That's the perfect way to describe her. Toph is a masterclass in subverting expectations.
She really is.
She is a blind 12-year-old girl who belongs to one of the wealthiest, most aristocratic families in the earth.
Right, so by every metric of her society, she is expected to be fragile.
Soft-spoken, entirely dependent on her parent, but instead she turns her disability into her greatest asset.
By utilizing earthbending to see through seismic sense, like feeling the vibrations in the ground.
Exactly. She becomes one of the most powerful, intimidating fighters on the planet.
But wait, I want to push back on how we frame Toph's independence.
Okay.
Because while she is undeniably powerful, her attitude often crosses the line into outright hostility.
That's true.
The video essayist points out that she's loud, unbelievably stubborn, and unapologetically abrasive.
Very brave.
In a lot of ways, she adopts the exact persona of a toxic, lone wolf male action hero. She refuses to carry her own weight in the group camp.
She mocks people who show emotion.
And she constantly picks fights. So why do we celebrate this as a triumph of character design rather than just, a female character adopting toxic masculine traits?
That is the exact nuance the video essay unpacks. If you only look at her actions in a vacuum, she appears unnecessarily abrasive.
Right.
But if you analyze the psychological mechanism behind that behavior, it is a trauma response directly tied to her lived experience.
Going back to that phrase.
Exactly. Her parents didn't just shelter her, they erased her agency.
They viewed her blindness as a tragedy that made her inherently broken.
They assigned guards to her, hid her from the world, and refused to acknowledge her incredible bending abilities. They built a gilded cage.
So for Toph, vulnerability literally meant captivity.
Okay. That makes so much sense. So her hostility isn't just a quirky personality trait, it's a survival tech.
Precisely. When she finally runs away to join Team Avatar, her aggressive independence is a direct rejection of the suffocating pity she experienced her entire life.
And this ties perfectly into the philosophy of earthbending itself.
How so?
Earthbending is based on the concept of neutral Jing.
Yeah.
It is about waiting, listening to the earth, and then striking with absolute unyielding force.
Right. An earthbender must have a firm, rooted stance.
If they are unsteady, they cannot move the rock. Toph applies this physical philosophy to her psychological state. She must remain utterly immovable.
She refuses to rely on anyone else because, in her experience, the moment you rely on someone, they dictate your limitations.
The essay emphasizes the concept of earned strength,
which is huge for her.
Toph's toughness doesn't feel like a magical gift. It is something she carved out of the earth in total secrecy, fighting in underground arenas.
Just to prove to herself that she wasn't the fragile doll.
It makes complete sense. If your entire life has been people telling you what you can't do, the moment you get a taste of autonomy, you are going to fiercely guard it.
But that hyper-independence comes with a massive cost.
It always does.
Toph essentially built a fortress out of solid stone around her own heart. A fortress is great at keeping danger out, sure. It keeps the pity out.
But the fundamental flaw of a fortress is that it also traps you inside.
Exactly. It's like wearing a suit of armor that is so thick and so heavy it protects you from the sword, but you can't actually move your arms to hug anyone.
The psychological toll of that armor is the true crux of her character arc.
Right.
Her real narrative journey isn't about learning a secret bending technique to defeat an enemy.
It is the agonizing process of learning how to dismantle her own defense.
The video highlights a pivotal, incredibly poignant interaction that perfectly illustrates this.
Is this the scene with Iroh?
Yes, the scene with Iroh. Toph is traveling with him and she is exhausted, but she stubbornly refuses his help.
Right. She says, people see me and think I'm weak. They want to take care of me, but I can take care of myself by myself.
And Iroh's response to her is one of the most important lines of dialogue in the entire series.
It's so good.
He doesn't coddle her, but he doesn't attack her either. He just calmly says, "You sound like my nephew, always thinking you need to do things on your own without anyone's support. There's nothing wrong with letting people who love you help."
There is nothing wrong with letting people who love you help.
For someone whose entire identity is constructed around being indestructible, that statement is paradigm.
It challenges her fundamental equation that help equals pity.
Exactly. Iris is telling her that accepting support from a place of love is entirely different from having limitations imposed on you out of pity.
To reach her full potential, she had to unlearn the trauma response that kept her isolated.
And it changes how she operates within the group.
It really does. She doesn't lose her edge, though.
No, she remains sarcastic, tough, and unapologetically herself. But she starts letting people in.
She allows Katara to comfort her. She allows En to lean on her.
She realizes that being part of a team doesn't diminish her individual strength. It amplifies it.
Think about how this applies to so many of us navigating our own lives.
Oh, it's incredibly relatable.
How often do we play the lone wolf at work or in our relationship because we are terrified that asking for help
Toph's story is a brilliant reminder that letting someone support you isn't a crack in your arm. It's a structural reinforcement.
She adapts. She realizes that absolute self-reliance is a myth and that trust is the actual foundation true power.
But the narrative architecture of the show demands that we explore the darkest possible alternative.
Right. What happens when someone refuses to learn that lesson?
What happens when a character builds their entire worldview on absolute control, extreme isolation, and weaponized fear?
We move from the tragic necessity of Toph's arm to the devastating reality.
Which brings us to the Fire Nation, and arguably one of the most terrifying, compelling antagonists in modern television.
Princess
Azula. If Katara draws power from compassion and Toph draws power from stubborn independence,
Azula draws her power entirely from calculation and fear.
The video essay makes a point to emphasize that Azula operates completely outside the standard conventions of a villain.
Right.
She is not driven by irrational chaos, she isn't a mindless monster, and she isn't motivated by blind rage.
Yeah, exactly.
She is motivated by a ruthless pursuit of absolute power, and it's underscored by a deeply buried, a toxic desire for validation from her father.
From the Fire Lord, yeah.
Exactly, the Fire Lord. We have to analyze the environment that forged her.
She grows up in this hyper-militaristic, imperialist society.
And her family dynamic is shattered. Her father is an abusive tyrant who views his children only as assets.
And her mother, who she desperately wanted affection from, ultimately disappears, leaving Azula feeling abandoned and unlovable.
Right. From the moment she can walk, the environment dictates a terrifying reality.
The world is a zero-sum.
In order for Azula to win, someone else has to lose.
Yeah. Her father teaches her that the only way to secure your position is to put others down.
And the only way to guarantee loyalty is to ensure people are more afraid of you than they are of the consequences of betraying you.
She is cold, she is methodical, and she genuinely takes pleasure in the psychological suffering of others.
She does.
But I want to explore how she operates, because we usually think of villains as out of control, like unhinged.
Yeah.
Azula is terrifying, specifically because she is hyper in control.
Let's look at the mechanics of her strategy. She doesn't just overpower people with stronger firebending.
Though she is a prophet.
Right. She's a prodigy. But she prefers to outsmart them.
Always.
The most prominent example is how she conquers the Earth Kingdom capital of Ba Sing Se,
which is this massive, impenetrable city that the Fire Nation military failed to breach for 100 years.
Azula doesn't use an army.
No. She disguises herself and her two closest friends, Mai and Tai, as Kyoshi warriors.
She infiltrates the city's political structure, manipulates the secret police, and stages a quiet, bloodless coup from the inside.
She identifies the structural weakness of the city's government and exploits it.
She didn't burn the walls down, she picked the lock.
It's brilliant, but it's completely sociopathic.
It really is.
She treats human relationships like a high-stakes game of Jenga.
That is a brilliant analogy.
She doesn't just hit the tower, she studies it. She figures out exactly which emotional blocks she can pull from a person to make them unstable.
She pulls the insecurity block from Ty Lee, threatening her with a subtle display of power, so Ty Lee abandons her life to join the mission.
She pulls the apathy block from Mai, giving her just enough excitement to keep her compliant.
She keeps everyone around her off balance so that she is the only one standing on solid ground.
The Jenga metaphor perfectly captures her methodology.
She views human beings as variables in a strategic equation.
She excels at combat because she excels at identifying.
When she fights Aang in the Crystal Catacombs, she doesn't just trade blows.
No, she waits for the exact fraction of a second when he is transitioning into the Avatar.
His most powerful, but also most physically vulnerable moment.
And she strikes him in the back with lightning. It is clinical, it is efficient.
But here is the massive, fatal flaw in her strategy.
And the ultimate tragedy of her character.
If you treat everyone in your life like Jenga block, eventually the tower.
If you view everyone as pieces on a chessboard, fail to account for the fact that the pieces have their own age.
The pieces might eventually realize they don't want to play your game anymore.
And that leads to the most shocking betrayal in this.
The turning point for Azula, the moment the structural integrity of her entire worldview begins to collapse, is the Boiling Rock prison incident.
Oh, that scene is unbelievable.
Mai aids Zuko's escape, directly defying Azula.
And when Azula confronts her, preparing to strike her down for treason, Ty Lee...
She paralyzes Azula to protect Mai. In a matter of seconds, Azula's two closest allies turn on her.
The people she believed she had completely subjugated here.
The dialogue in that scene is incredible.
Azula looks at Mai, absolutely furious, and demands to know why she would risk.
And Mai looks the most terrifying person in the world dead in the eye and says, I love Zuko more than I fear you.
I love Zuko more than I fear you.
And we must deeply analyze Azula's response to that declaration.
Because a traditional villain would scream in rage or vow revenge.
Azula doesn't do that. She is paralyzed, looking up from the ground, and she says, no, you miscalculated. You should have feared me more.
That specific word choice is just chilling.
It is.
It reveals the absolute limitation of psychology.
She literally cannot comprehend human emotion outside the framework of a mathematical.
She thinks love is just a variable that might incorrectly weighed against the variable of.
She genuinely thinks Mai just did the math wrong.
It is the profound tragedy of the lived experience we have.
In Azula's lived experience, love is a lie.
Love is something her mother gave to Zuko, leaving her with nothing.
Fear is the only reliable currency she has ever known.
It can force obedience, it can conquer cities, but it cannot create genuine, lasting human connection.
Azula's entire reality is shattered because, for the first time in her life, she is confronted with a variable she cannot control.
Love overrides fear. The equation fails.
And the unraveling of her mind after that point is so meticulously depicted.
Because her fundamental understanding of how the world works has been proven false, she descends into severe paranoia.
When she finally gets exactly what she always wanted, when she is crowned Fire Lord, she is completely alone.
She has banished all her servants, she has alienated her friends,
And her father has moved on to a higher title, leaving her behind just like her mother did.
The absolute authority she chased her entire life, combined with the absolute isolation created by her methods, leads to a complete psychological collapse.
She begins hallucinating her mother in the mirror.
She cuts her own hair in a manic frenzy.
She cracks under the weight of the very crown she sacrificed her humanity to obtain.
The exact mechanism she used to survive, isolating herself and dominating others, is the exact mechanism that destroys.
It's a terrifying mirror to hold up to leadership and power dynamic in the real world.
It really is. Think about how you operate when you are under pressure.
If you are managing a team on a tight deadline or organizing a massive project, do you rely on intimidation?
Do you rely on the fear of your disappointment to ensure compliance?
Because Azula's fate proves that fear-based leadership has a strict, unavoidable expiration.
Eventually, the people you are pressuring will realize that the cost of your approval is higher than the consequence of your wreck.
And when they walk away, you are left completely alone with the empire you built.
It is a phenomenal cautionary tale.
And when we step back from the individual character studies, we have to synthesize what the coexistence of Katara, Toph, and Azula within a single narrative framework actually teaches.
Right, we have the compassionate warrior, the unapologetic survivor, and the tragic.
How do they collectively rewrite the rules of narrative fiction?
This is where the source video essay by Mazur really brings it all home.
It ties everything together so well.
Narrative fiction, historically and even largely today, tries to force female characters into those binary boxes we talked about.
You are either soft, nurturing, and defenseless, or you are hard, powerful, and devoid of
The culture dictates that to survive a brutal world, a female character must abandon her femininity entirely.
She must adopt the traditional stoic traits of masculine action heroes.
Or she is handed a completely unearned magical power-up just so she can punch as hard as the men in the story.
If we look at the structural framework of so much modern media, this explains why it often feels hollow.
When a character is written simply to fulfill a girl boss trope, they lose their narrative.
The writers prioritize the aesthetic of power over the messy reality of psychology.
But Avatar ensures that character choices actually dictate.
When characters are reduced to appearances or sidelined to fit a trope, their decisions carry no weight.
This show never allowed the spectacle of elemental magic to replace the necessity.
The magic system itself was just an extension of their internal struggle.
That is the genius of it. Katara gets to be deeply, fiercely compassionate, and she gets to be right.
Toph gets to be incredibly tough, incredibly stubborn, and completely vulnerable when she finally lets her guard.
Azula gets to be terrifyingly competent, a strategic genius, and a deeply, heartbreakingly tragic victim.
They are not perfect, sanitized role.
They are allowed to be complex, messy humans.
Underneath the mythology, the martial arts, and the world building, the show is telling a profoundly human story about identity.
It is a story about the painful, necessary process of growing.
Instead of shrinking to fit what other people expect.
It validates the linguistic argument from the economy of lived expression.
The reason these characters resonate is that their power is intrinsically linked to their distinct experience.
The essayist concludes the analysis with an incredibly poignant quote from the show itself.
It's a moment of reflection where a character says, I know sometimes it hurts more to hope and it hurts more to care, but you have to promise that you won't stop caring.
Line hits so hard.
It does.
Because we live in a society that constantly demands apathy. We were bombarded with reasons to detach, to look out only for ourselves.
And to view emotional investment as a liability.
In a world that equates emotional detachment with professionalism or strength, choosing to care is an act of sheer defiance.
Caring is the ultimate act of rebellion, cynical.
And that brings us full circle to the very premise of our deep dive.
We started with the concept of experience versus lived experience.
Through the lens of this exhaustive character analysis, we can see exactly why that distinction matters, even if the phrasing is redundant.
We saw how Katara, Toph, and Azula didn't just exist as avatars for fantasy tropes.
Their immense power within the narrative was explicitly drawn from their distinct, often painful encounters with the world.
Katara's experience with profound law, systemic sexism, forged her compassionate, adaptable strength.
Toph's experience with suffocating tradition and ableism forged her unyielding, earth-shaking.
Azula's experience with emotional abuse and imperialist expectations forged her tragic, desperate need for control.
Crucially, they were not handed power despite their femininity.
The show's ultimate, enduring triumph is that their unique, varied interpretations of their own femininity were their power.
True strength, as demonstrated by the architecture of this story, isn't about successfully navigating the box society tries to put you in.
Or finding a more comfortable way to sit inside the cage.
It is about recognizing the structural flaws of those boxes and dismantling them entirely.
And that is the thought we want to leave you with today.
We've spent a long time analyzing how these fictional teenagers refuse to shrink to fit the expectations of their war-torn.
But take a second and think about your own daily.
Think about the specific face you put on for your boss, the careful persona you maintain for your extended.
Or maybe even the guard you keep up around your closest friend.
How much of your daily, precious energy is spent maintaining a version of yourself that is just a binary box someone else designed?
Because if you stop trying to perform strength in the exact way that society expects you to,
what kind of authentic, unstoppable power might you actually uncover?
It is a daunting question, but it is one worth asking yourself every single day.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives around you, keep looking for the lived experiences beneath the surface, and keep exploring your own story.
We'll catch you on the next.